Welcome back to For the Home Cook. So of course, this show is all about saving money on our grocery bills. As you know, things get more expensive, maybe our budgets are getting a little tighter. That is especially true in the month of November, because not only are we still just trying to feed us and our family, eventually the kids are going to be out of school for that week of Thanksgiving, and on top of that, we're going to have Thanksgiving dinner costs on top of that. So in this series, we are trying to do Thanksgiving on a budget. So we have covered everything from turkey, dressing, stuffing, mashed potatoes, gravy, all of those things. And now today we're going to talk about side dishes and vegetables and that sort of little atmosphere. Now I will tell you, because the most expensive thing on your menu is going to be that turkey, this is a great opportunity to look at what kind of vegetables are the most cost effective, and then make a lot more side dishes than you do your actual turkey. So in our first series, our first episode of this, we talked about the turkey is going to be the most expensive thing, and a lot of times you're paying for the whole turkey, and not everyone's going to eat the whole turkey. So why not maybe get less of a turkey, maybe just get the turkey breast, and then focus on a lot more sides where you can use cost-effective vegetables and recipes to maybe build out your Thanksgiving dinner that's not focused, primarily on a turkey being so expensive. So let's talk about some of the cheapest vegetables that we have out there. So of course we think of things like zucchini, broccoli, potatoes, cabbage, romaine lettuce. We've also got broccoli and carrots and those sorts of things. Those are going to be the cheapest vegetables that you can buy. And they can also make some really, really great side dishes. So of course you could do some roasted carrots, you could do some roasted broccoli. Think about using things like, Parmesan and garlic and those roasted vegetables. And you can make a lot for not a whole lot of money. I've also seen casseroles that you can do with like zucchini. And we have one of those posted below. So think about those casseroles that you can, one, make ahead, and two, use ingredients that are going to be very, very cost effective. So also corn is one vegetable that's going to be pretty cost effective no matter if you get it. I know corn on the cob is kind of hard to find these days. It's not really in season anymore, but you also have frozen corn and you have canned corn, and all of those are still cost effective. So I've seen some like corn casseroles, and I've got a recipe below that looks really, really good. It only takes a few ingredients. It's going to make something that's going to be really, really delicious. But I thought, why not make some creamed corn in our slow cooker? Now, anytime that you can use the slow cooker, I say do it. We did our turkey in a slow cooker, and that worked out pretty well. You can also use it in your side dishes. You can use it in those things that you put in first thing in the morning, you let it cook for a few hours or for, the half of the day, and then you've got your vegetables done, or you've got a side dish done in the slow cooker. It can be off on a different table out of the way of the kitchen. Once you start getting in the kitchen, every bowl is out, every pan is out, everything's being made. You may not have room for that extra side dish. Using the slow cooker kind of takes that away. So let's talk about slow cooker creamed corn, which is what I have right here. So this recipe is super, super simple. If you don't like creamed corn, you can also, use some other recipes. You don't have to maybe make it as sweet, but this one is really, really simple. It costs less than $5 to make, and you can double it, and it's still going to make a lot of food. So what we did for this one is we've got 3 cans of whole kernel corn. I got the no salt added because, well, I don't want it to be too salty. I also didn't put salt in it until it cooked, and then you can go back and add the salt that you need. It's also got a whole 1 cup of whole milk, a tablespoon of sugar. Now, this one was not very sweet whenever I tried it just a few minutes ago. If you like that sweet creamed corn, go ahead and add a little bit more sugar. You're going to have an opportunity once it cooks to kind of stir everything together and taste it. And at that point, you can add more salt or more pepper or, some more like milk or sugar or whatever you want in there to kind of change the consistency. It's also got a block of cream cheese, and then it's got some unsalted butter. So what we did is we drained all the corn, put it in your slow cooker. I always use these liners because I am not cleaning this thing unless I absolutely have to. I can wipe it out at the end, and I don't have to worry about it being something stuck on or something cooked on. So 3 cans of corn, we drain those, we put in the milk, we put in the sugar, put in a little bit of pepper, stir all of that together, and then we're going to turn it on high. We're going to take our cream cheese, and you can either cut it into little squares, which was a mess, or you can just take a spoon and kind of dollop out what you need. You're going to put all of that on top, and then you're going to do the same thing with 1 stick of butter, which is a ½ cup of butter, and you're going to cut it into little cubes, put it all over the top, put your lid on, do not stir it, don't stir in your cream cheese or your butter. Put the top on, let it cook for about 3 hours, take it off, stir it. You're going to stir all of your cream cheese and your butter into it, And then at that point, taste it. Now this one, I did add a little bit more salt because, well, I like salt. But you don't have to. I added a little bit more pepper because I like corn that's got pepper. But at that point, you know, if you think, oh, okay, maybe I don't like it as creamy as it looks right here, or maybe you think it needs a little bit more liquid. All of those things, you can go ahead and add what you need because you're gonna cook it for an additional 15 minutes. So this one, if you've ever had cream corn from the can, I'm not a huge fan of that. I grew up on it, not a huge fan. So you're not looking at really mushy cream styled corn. This one, the corn is still very much intact in the way that you put it into the slow cooker. If for some reason you were like, I want it to be a little bit more of a traditional from the can cream corn, you could always mash up a little bit of the corn to make it kind of thick and to kind of make it not so much just whole corn looking like that. So an easy recipe, like I said, this one was under $5 to make. You could double this, you could triple this. You could even make a corn casserole in the oven, and it's a really cost-effective meal. Now, one of the other things that I love to make, green bean casserole. Like that's a must-have for me. I only eat it during the Thanksgiving season, but it's a must-have. It's one of my favorite Thanksgiving dishes. So I've seen a lot of recipes with fresh green beans. So we're gonna talk about fresh green beans versus canned green beans and kind of what that cost looks like. So I used fresh green beans. So I have 2 pounds of green beans right here. What I did is I put these in some boiling water for about 4 to 5 minutes, and then you're gonna drain them, immediately put them in some iced water so that they're gonna keep kind of this vibrant color and partially cook them. Now these were also super long green beans, so I cut them in half. You could cut them into thirds and you're gonna get even more green beans than you have. So this is what we have here. Now I will tell you, I've always made green bean casserole with just green beans in a can, and that is, I think, the most cost-effective thing that you can do. So if you're gonna do that, then you are going to have 2 cans of green beans. For every 2 cans of green beans, a can of cream of mushroom soup. Now, depending on the consistency that you like, you may add some more green beans. A lot of people don't like the more soupy green bean casserole versus more of the green bean part. So that ratio can change for a lot of people. But in general, 2 cans of green beans, a can of cream of mushroom soup. You're gonna need some milk, some pepper, and then the crispy onions. Now, I will tell you, these crispy onions is gonna be the most costly thing in this recipe. I love them, I can't go without them, but just know that you don't have to put as many as the recipe says. You could just maybe put them all over the top and only a little bit inside. You could also just replace the crispy onions with maybe some sauteed onions and put those in it, and then put the crispy onions on top. So more cost effective. So what we're gonna do with the fresh green beans, in total this cost me about $12 with the fresh green beans. If you're gonna do it with canned, for the same, just about the same amount, it's only going to cost you about $8. So if you're thinking to yourself, maybe I can just get fresh green beans and it's going to make it more cost effective. No, not really. So I would say do this with the cans, but because I have the ingredients, let's go ahead and make this and we'll see how it goes. So I do have my green beans. They have been blanched in some salt water, put in some ice water, so that is good to go. So what we're going to do, because we're doubling this recipe, so I said, you know, 2 cans for 1 can of soup. So for this one, we've got our green beans. We're gonna do 2 cans of cream of mushroom soup. I usually just put all of this in a pan and mix it. I'm not fancy and or don't want to waste a bowl. But you know what, for you guys, I'm gonna dirty up another bowl because I have a dishwasher. All right, so we're gonna do 2 cans. Now what's interesting about this recipe is this one called for a little bit of soy sauce. It was like a tablespoon of soy sauce, which makes sense, but also I would have never thought to add that in here. So we'll see how that goes. We're also gonna add a little bit of garlic. I add garlic in literally everything that I cook. If I could have put it in the cream corn, it would have gone in the cream corn. And then we're also going to add a little bit of that soy sauce. If you don't have this, this is not like a make or break, just skip it. I still had some in my fridge from like, you know, 16 recipes ago that I didn't use. But if you don't have any, that's perfectly fine. We're also gonna add pepper. You're not gonna add salt to this because, and I know it looks like a lot of pepper, it's like a 1/4 teaspoon. We're not gonna add salt to this because the cream of mushroom soup is gonna be salty, and I don't wanna over salt everything until we get to the end. So if you try it before you put it into a pan and you're like, maybe need a little bit of salt, go ahead and add some, but the recipe does not call for it. So we're also gonna have 3/4 cup of whole milk. And we're going to mix this up. This is why I do it in the pan, because all of this could just mix together. Actually, we doubled this, so let me do. I mean, we would have found out once we mix in the green beans that that probably was not enough sauce. That's all right. Okay, that looks pretty well incorporated. Now, another thing that I always did that I guess I didn't realize I was doing wrong is when you put the crispy onions on top, don't do that until the end. I used to put them on top and then bake it. It's fine. I mean, that's how I've always made it and eaten it. But we're going to wait and put some of those in the end. All right, I'm just going to mix this in this pan. You could put this in with the green beans and then call it good, but I'm just going to do this all in the pan. This will help that you don't have as many dishes. Like I've used every bowl. It's like one of those, subscription services where like all of a sudden you use every single bowl in your house. But it only took 30 minutes to cook. At what cost? All right, so we're going to mix this together. And get this partially mixed. Then we'll taste it. It probably needs salt. I don't think I've ever done this where I didn't add salt to it, but once again, just go ahead and taste it. You do get a little bit of salt from that soy sauce, so it might be fine. You can also, like these green beans are still a little bit long for me personally, but you could always cut them up to be a little bit smaller. All right. There are several varieties of these in the store, so if you want to look around, I know that there is one brand that a lot of people get. There are also off brands. It may not be as much. You may not be getting as much when you do that, but still could be a good alternative if you want to save a little bit of money. Okay, I'm going to taste the sauce. I'm going to add a little bit of salt. So you want to mix in half of the crispy onions right now, and then you want to add in the other half. You're going to cook this for 20 to 30 minutes, and then at the end, that last 5 minutes, go ahead and bring it out. Put the rest of the onions on top, and then put it back in there for about 5 to 10 additional minutes. This is one of those that you could make ahead. Just obviously don't put the onions on top, but you could get it to this point, put, some plastic wrap over the top and then put it in the fridge, and then you're good to go for Thanksgiving Day. Anything that you can, if you have the space, anything that you can prepare ahead of time is really going to help in that cooking process. Okay. That's good to go. So our oven's at 350. We're going to go ahead and throw this in here. We're going to bake this, like I said, 25 to 30 minutes, and then we'll check on it in 25 and go ahead and put our onions on it at that point. Okay, so that's our second dish. A must-have for me when it comes to Thanksgiving. Another must-have is sweet potatoes. And I know that everyone has their own recipe for sweet potatoes, and I will tell you some pros and cons of all of those. So sweet potatoes for me is a must-have. I didn't grow up with them, but it is something that I have had plenty of recipes over the years that have kind of turned me into it's a must-have for Thanksgiving. Now, I know a lot of people will say, sweet potatoes versus yams, and sometimes you'll get those cans and it says yams. Those are interchangeable. A lot of people use them and don't realize that they are different. The difference is kind of subtle, but still, yams and sweet potatoes are different things. So when you're getting those in the can, just know that they may not be sweet potatoes. Just look on the can and make sure. But I will tell you, sweet potatoes are a very cost-effective vegetable right now. I think I got a 3-pound bag of sweet potatoes for, I think it was like $3, $3.50. So very cost effective. And it can be something that you make in a side dish for Thanksgiving. And depending on what you add in there, it could still be a very cost-effective dish. So think about this one. If you've never had it before, there are plenty of recipes online. You can get the recipe below. Plenty of recipes where just try your hand at it. It's probably going to be fine. You're going to add so much sugar and good stuff in there that, like, even I think the worst sweet potato casserole is probably still going to be pretty good. So sweet potatoes and yams, I've got below what the difference on those is. Yams are really starchy. They actually can be toxic if you eat them raw, like actual yams, which is kind of scary. So we'll stick with sweet potatoes. But there are plenty of ways to cook these. Let's talk about what I did. So I've got 4 cups of peeled and diced sweet potatoes. The smaller that you dice them, the quicker they are going to cook. So I did mine in really, really small pieces. It only took maybe 10 minutes of boiling for these to be done. So I've got these. I boiled them for about 10 or so minutes in some water. Obviously, don't salt the water. Don't put anything in the water. But we're going to drain these right quick. I promise this is not that nonstick that you can't like put a fork in there. It's fine. Okay, so I've got those. Once these are drained, I'm going to put them into a very, very large bowl, and we're going to mash those before we add anything else. So you can mash them with your potato masher. You can mash them with a fork. You could put these in your stand mixer or get a hand mixer and go ahead and use those to make them super, super creamy and uniform where there are no chunks. You know, it's fine. Once again, we're going to add so much sugar and stuff into these. If you have like a little bit of a chunk of a sweet potato, it's going to be fine. So you want to boil these until they're fork tender, like I said, about 10 or 15 minutes. And then go ahead and put them in a bowl and mash them. So I will tell you, this recipe cost me, I want to say it was about $10 for this entire recipe, but I'll tell you honestly, half of that recipe were the chopped pecans, because pecans are absolutely not a cost-effective item at any point of the year, but especially during a holiday season. So I'm gonna have a recipe below, and I'm gonna talk about some things that you can do instead of pecans. But if maybe you have some that have been in the cabinet, or you have someone who has pecan trees and you can ask them very nicely for some, I like it in this dish. But like I said, half of your cost is going to come from pecans. So if that's not feasible for you, then you can absolutely skip them. Once we put on the topping in this, you can skip that and you're still going to be perfectly fine. Okay, so we've got that. Now we're going to add in 2 eggs. I have these in a bowl because sometimes you crack eggs and the shells stay in there, which happens to me quite often. See, I just threw it in there. Okay, that one's fine. These have been off the heat for a few minutes now, so I'm not worried about scrambling eggs here. But if these are super, super hot, obviously don't add eggs into very, very hot items because then all of a sudden you have scrambled eggs. This one hasn't been boiling for a little bit, and I know that it's kind of calmed down, so I'm not too worried about that. All right, we're also going to add half a cup of regular sugar, and then we are also going to be adding half a cup of milk. And once we mix this up, if you think that you need a little bit more sugar, a little bit more milk, we'll talk about that. We don't want it to be too dry. We're also going to add some vanilla. And I'm going to add about 4 tablespoons of butter. Now this one is at room temperature. If not, you can melt it as well. Just make sure, of course, if you have the eggs in there, you're not pouring melted scalding hot butter into that. but this should be fine. And then we're gonna add a little bit of salt. It's about a half a teaspoon. That feels like half a teaspoon to me. Obviously, at this point, you cannot taste test this. So if you were worried, like if you've never made this before, maybe don't add the eggs just yet. Add everything else and then taste it, see how you feel about it, and then add the eggs in at the end, unless you're just brave. I know people out there who can be. I've also seen recipes where you can add like cinnamon and nutmeg into this. I don't necessarily do that, but I can see how it would be good in this because we're also going to top it with some brown sugar and have kind of a crumble on top, so it makes sense. Okay, so we're gonna get all this stirred up. So this is kind of the consistency that you want, kind of like whenever we made our cornbread dressing. Like you don't want it to be super dry, you don't want it to be super wet either. So this is kind of that middle ground. If you wanted to, you could also add a little bit more milk, but this is fine. Okay, so now we're gonna add this to a pan. I will also tell you, if you can, even if you have to go to kind of a discount store or a really cheap store, getting pans for all of your Thanksgiving stuff is a lifesaver and a must-have for me. I do not like to get every single pan I own out to make dishes. So I know that they're like $1, $1.25 depending on where you go. I would say go ahead and invest in that because then you can throw them away at the end, or you could save them, kind of move everything around. Now everyone has a dish to take their leftovers home. All right, so now we're gonna make the topping. So I've got half a cup of brown sugar. I've got a 1/3 cup of flour. And we're gonna mix that. I'm just gonna mix it with my hands. And then with this, we are going to add in some butter. So we're going to do 3 to 4 tablespoons. Once again, you want this to be at room temperature because we're going to kind of cut in this butter. You can do it with a fork, you can do it with your hands, you can do it with a pastry cutter, but we're just going to mix this in to get kind of a crumble mixture. I'm already using my hands, so that's what we're doing. Probably wasn't the best option. Probably cleaner with a fork, but that's okay. All right, so we're gonna mix this until everything comes together. And at this point, if you look and you're like, oh, I think I added too much butter, just add some more brown sugar in there, add some more flour until you get the crumble consistency that you need. If for some reason you're not getting a crumble consistency, add more butter. Recipes are good, but this one we're just going to kind of eyeball it. So this one, your oven's going to be 325, and you are going to cook this for about 30 minutes. This is another one that you can really make ahead, except for this topping, obviously. Make this fresh, make this right before you put it in there. But you can make this ahead of time. It'll save you some time the day of. If you don't want to make all of it or some of it ahead of time, you can also go ahead and cut up your sweet potatoes. Just put them in a bowl, cover them with water, and then those will stay good until you're ready to boil them, which is what I did. So I peeled them, I cut them. That way I can get, all of that trash into the dumpster. It doesn't have to sit in my trash can the day of the holiday. And then you can just boil them the next day. Okay, so we are just gonna crumble this all over the top. Now, when it comes to chopped pecans, they were supposed to go in this crumble, and I didn't add them, and that's okay. because mistakes are going to be made. So what I'll do is I'll just add those on the top. I'm also going to add some marshmallows. Now, listen, I have seen plenty of recipes where marshmallows go on top, and I love it. If you're looking for a way to save some money on this recipe, go ahead and add in some marshmallows, because those are only $1 instead of $4 to $5 chopped pecans. So if you're looking, you're like, maybe I don't want to do pecans, but I want to do this crumble, just go ahead and add in some marshmallows on top. Go ahead and add about a half a cup. That looks like a half a cup to me. And then I'm gonna do marshmallows only on half of it. There are some people who may be eating this here in a little bit who aren't a huge fan of marshmallows. So because we're making so much, even if you wanted to only put marshmallows on half, you could do that. Also, if you're looking at this, you're like, oh, I wish there was more crumble, then make double the amount. That's perfectly fine. You have the ingredients, you have the time, go ahead and double it and call it good. This will go in a 325-degree oven for about 30 minutes. You want everything to be cooked. You want the marshmallows to be all toasty. You want the crumble to look done. And then there you go. So we'll put this in the oven. We have been talking a lot about Thanksgiving and the different dishes that you have for Thanksgiving. I will tell you, if you look at the list down below and you see kind of those cheaper vegetables, go ahead and maybe make some side dishes that have to do with that. For example, romaine lettuce is super, super cost effective. So maybe you make a salad this time. And it's not a traditional Thanksgiving, but it is one that you can afford for you and your family, or for those potlucks or whatever that you may be going to this season. This is the season of maybe we should try something else. Maybe we don't have, every single dish that we usually do at Thanksgiving. This might be that time, and that's perfectly fine. So as we go through here, we're also going to talk about different breads. If you want to make rolls, is it more cost effective to make them at home versus going to buy them? We're also going to talk about desserts that you can do that are very, very cost effective. They may not be the traditional desserts, but we will go through desserts. We will also go through rolls. We'll go through cranberry sauce, all of those extra things that we do during Thanksgiving. But for now, we will go. I'm going to put this in the oven, but thank you for watching For the Home Cook. We'll see you next time.